number 10, we've got Zombie Wolverine. From Marvel's Zombies universe, a 5-issue limited series that ran from December 2005 to April 2006, this one was written by none other than Robert Kirkman. So in this version of Wolverine, the zombie virus takes over his healing abilities, so much so that his flesh actually rots off faster than his adamantium bones. He takes on the Silver Surfer and along with some of the other zombie heroes ends up killing him and then eats him. Tasty. And at number 9, we've got Captain Logan from X-Men Noir. This one's from the Marvel Noir series, which is an alternative continuity that was published between 2009 and 2010. In this reality, the X-Men are considered a group of sociopathic teens, and Charles Xavier actually discredits them. So meet Captain Logan, a bootlegger in New York's Chinatown who defends himself with a metallic claw. In this universe, he's actually scratched out Scott Summers' left eye and spends a whole lot of time being drunk. Up next at number 8, we've got Wolverine Noir. Another contribution from the Marvel Noir series, Wolverine Noir features a very different Wolverine than the one in our previous number. This time around, we're hanging out with Jim Logan, a detective with a gritty past and a Catholic upbringing. He's a knife expert in 1937 New York, and like many of the other numbers on this list, he's forced to deal with his traumatic past throughout the course of the story. Many people have an issue with the disjointed continuity between the X-Men Noir and the Wolverine Noir series, and the fact that the character has two very different personas in each. I don't know, what do you guys think? Does it bother you?
Number 7. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy is the son of Wolverine from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Though Jimmy wouldn't know he was Wolverine's son until his mutant powers manifested. His powers are similar to his dad's, but Jimmy is also bonded to one of the poisons, a kind of symbiotic alien creature that typically takes over their hosts. However, after their leader died, Jimmy found a way to control his poison. While bonded to his poison, Jimmy also has spider-like abilities and can shapeshift, turning his claws into tensile, goo-like tendrils, or extremely elongated spikes. Whatever he prefers for the day. Number 6. X-24. X-24 was a clone of Logan made to defeat the old man version of him and recapture the clones who had escaped. He was powerful enough to take on both old man Logan and Laura Kinney at the same time, and Logan pretty much dies trying to fight him in the end, and X-24 is even then only killed after X-23 is forced to shoot him with an adamantium bullet that Wolverine was actually saving for himself to end his own life. X-24 is one tough dude in this movie. He is a version of Logan whose rage is more tapped into and unleashed. What's more, he was engineered to be comparable to Logan in terms of his power level, but in peak physical condition. Considered to be like Wolverine, but as he was in his prime. Number 5. Gorgon. I always forget that Gorgon was also Wolverine, but him being one of Norman Osborn's dark recruits and carrying the mantle would definitely make him one of the most powerful alternate versions of Wolverine around, because Gorgon is a pretty powerful and deadly guy. Even if, as we learned during the Otherworld tournament in Ten of Swords, he isn't immune to the seduction of rock sirens. Gorgon is a masterful fighter and a powerful mutant who also has the ability to turn his opponents to stone, hence his name. Gorgon. He is a deadly force to be reckoned with, and I personally feel bad for all of the folks who have to challenge him whenever he's working security for the mutants of Krakoa. A lot of those people just are getting maimed left, right, and center. Ugh. Number 4. Daken. Daken, or Akihiro, is a deadly member of the Wolverine family who spent his time as Wolverine when he was on the Dark Avengers. It was during this time that Daken attempted to take the Muramasa blade for himself to boost his power. He planned on having it bonded to his skeleton and coating his claws in it, and he wanted it so he could basically go kill Romulus. Remember Romulus, everyone? Whatever happened with that? He was successful in bonding the Muramasa blade to his claws, but didn't get to hold on to that power permanently. He would go on to battle and defeat both Scar and the Punisher, in fact seemingly killing Frank Castle, who would then go on to become Franken Castle for a time. One of Daken's most powerful abilities is his pheromone control, which can allow him to alter his opponent's mood. This is actually how he won against Scar, using pheromones to calm Scar down, which caused him to then transform. And transform in a way where he was just more chill.
Up next, number 3 is What If Wolverines. So the What If Marvel series consisted of a bunch of issues that simply pose the question, what if? This series ran from 1989 to 1998, and Wolverine had quite a few different appearances in them. While some of these are fluff issues, others are interesting insights into what could have happened in another timeline. So here's a few for you guys. In issue 7, Wolverine works for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury and actually takes over the organization when Fury is killed. In another, Wolverine fights Conan the Barbarian and hooks up with Red Sonja. And in another, he's killed by the Hulk when Hulk breaks his spine, changing the events of the Adversary vs. Roma War. There's even another one where Wolverine becomes one of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which is just kinda cool. And at number 2, we've got Logan Wayne, Darkclaw. From the Amalgam comics, we've actually touched on this character before on a few other lists, because he's so badass. Here we have an amalgamation of Wolverine and Batman. hence the name. His origin story is a combination of the two. Sort of. Logan Wayne witnessed his parents' murders, and then he was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, which is a province here in Canada in case you didn't know. Anyway, shortly after he arrives in Alberta, his uncle, who is also an RCMP officer, is killed, so he lives with nuns and eventually enlists in the Royal Canadian Air Force, where he befriends another man named Creed H. Quinn, but more on him in a second. Logan then ends up in the Weapon X program, which inevitably collapses, and Logan travels the world before going back to New Gotham and donning the Dark Claw mantle. And his foe? Well, this is where Creed comes back in. He's a combination of the Joker, Harley Quinn, and Sabretooth called Hyena, after Weapon X removes all humanity from within him. Pretty ferocious. And finally, at number 1, we've got Old Man Logan. Or rather, James Howlett from Earth 807128. It's a mouthful. So this one's a bit dark. This happens in an alternate universe where supervillains have overthrown the heroes. After Charles Xavier's mansion was invaded by a group of supervillains, Wolverine fights them off, killing them all. He's about to face off against Bullseye when it's revealed that he's been under Mysterio's illusion and he actually killed all of the X-Men instead of the villains. After that, he ran off into the woods denouncing his violent past, and even tried to commit suicide by lying on train tracks. He spends the next 50 years as a farmer, not popping out his claws at all, and raises a family. But then that family gets murdered by a gang called the Hulk Gang, who are the incestuous hillbilly children of Hulk and She-Hulk. Because he owes the gang money for his rent, Logan ends up accepting a job from a now blind Hawkeye and, well, it goes down. And fun fact, Old Man Logan was the inspiration for the recent 2017 film Logan.
Number 10. Dirty Bomb Wolverine. Why does this sound like some sort of sexy nickname for Wolverine? It really is not. Instead, this alternate version of Wolverine is an empty clone that was created in the current Wolverine series and used to basically burn vampires loyal to Dracula from the inside out. This all went down in a battle in the effort of freeing Omega Red from Dracula's hold over him, while also getting back at Drac, who was attempting to get his hands on Wolverine so he could use his blood to allow his own vampire army to walk around during the day, making them obviously much more powerful. Omega Red's plan to stop Dracula was to give him what he wanted, which meant making a clone of Wolverine who was gene edited to have blood that was thick with photonic cells, similar to the ones found in plankton, which produce their own luminescence. Basically, the blood of the Dirty Bomb clone Wolverine then had the opposite effect on the vamps who consumed it, meaning they would be burnt from the inside out as opposed to being able to walk in the day. Having a gene-edited clone of Wolverine is a frightening prospect, and a clone who is used simply as a decoy and bomb is pretty morally scary. And then there is the added factor of how it made the vampires feel to learn of it. And I'm sure that they were properly terrified before they were all killed. Minus Dracula, of course, who got away in the end, like he always does. Although the mutants won the battle in issue number 12 of the current Wolverine series, they did not win the war. Still continues with the Vampire Nation. Number 8. Phoenix. One of the most terrifying versions of Wolverine in terms of what he could be capable of has to be the Wolverine from the alternate future where Thor ends up as Allfather and Loki wipes out all of humanity, just to make his brother suffer, of course. In this dystopian future, Wolverine himself ends up being chosen to become the new host for the Phoenix Force after his own death. Phoenix Logan was obviously capable of many different insane feats due to him being imbued with, well, the Phoenix Force, even managing to save Loki from the Celestials. Pretty impressive. However, Phoenix Wolverine would prove to be not quite as scary when facing a future version of Doom, who obliterated him. But Logan, being imbued with the power of the Phoenix Force, meant that he could resurrect, and in order to ensure that Doom would be defeated this time around, he sacrificed himself to empower Allfather Thor's weapon Mjolnir in the continued battle. Also, that would be the one really powerful Mjolnir. It's like Mjolnir with the Phoenix Force. That's crazy.
At number 7, we've got Ultimate Wolverine. From the Ultimate imprint, published in 2001, Ultimate Wolverine goes by the nickname of Lucky Jim. Wolverine has lost his memory, again, this time due to Weapon X's tampering. He runs into Captain America, who recognizes him as a soldier he worked with during World War II, which is where he got the nickname of Lucky Jim due to never dying on a mission. And there's even an Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk story that was penned by one of the co-creators of Lost. Up next at number 6, we've got Wolverine the End. There's been a lot of debate as to whether or not this alternate future is actually alternate and not within the current Marvel Universe continuity. So Marvel's The End series consists of alternate endings for various characters in their universe. While there is a series for the X-Men, and Aged Wolverine has his own 6-issue run, which consisted of him living in the Canadian wilderness outlining his final days, and his quest to unearth answers when he discovers his origin story isn't what he thought it was. Big surprise there. Many fans generally liked the series, but some were disappointed with the conclusion of the story. It just didn't live up to the hype. And at number 5, we've got Wolverine Max. The Max comic line is another one of Marvel's alternate imprints that featured more mature and R-rated content, which was a product of Marvel breaking away from the very archaic and dying Comics Code Authority and creating their own rating system, even though no one was really following the Comics Code Authority at that point. Anyway, this version of Wolverine wakes up in the wreckage of an airplane in Japan with no memory, minus a few violent flashbacks. With a bit of a Jason Bourne vibe going on, Wolverine attempts to figure out how he ended up there, piecing together his past and saying the F word a lot. He also visits a strip club, because hey, why not? This Max series received mixed reviews, mainly with fans being disappointed that the story wasn't overly groundbreaking for the character. At least it had some cool cover art on its 15-issue run, despite critics also having mixed feelings about the disjointedness of the illustration within the series itself. Up next, number 4, we've got Wolverine Prodigal Son. Prodigal Son was a 2009 one-issue comic that featured Wolverine as a teenager, drawn in the style of manga. Cancelled after the first issue, it became a bit of a cult classic, and a bit of a disappointment for some fans who wanted more. So in this issue, we have a very rebellious Logan, who was left in a forest as a child and no recollection of how he got there. Sound familiar? And he's learning martial arts at a school somewhere in Canada. His classmates have nicknamed him Wolverine, and the whole plot surrounds the idea that he wants to figure out his past. There's a theme going on with this one, guys.
Number 2, Lord of the Vampires. This alternate version of Wolverine comes to us from the What If series, Volume 2, Issue 24. Here, the fate of the world was forever changed when, during the X-Men's battle with Dracula, Storm ultimately decided to remain with Dracula. This changed the course of history forever, as Wolverine and the other heroes were captured and transformed into vampires themselves. However, Wolverine's willpower proved much too strong for Dracula to tame or control. And so, he was challenged and later defeated by Wolverine, who then became the new Lord of the Vampires. What's scarier than a Terminator-style clone version of Wolverine? How about a vampire version of Wolverine who rules over all of the other vampires and can turn anyone into his loyal thrall? Number 10, Rancor. Rancor is the descendant of Wolverine who hails from the Earth of 691. She first appeared in the original Guardians of the Galaxy series in issue number 8. When she was just a teenager, she battled her own father and defeated him by clawing out his heart. Yikes. She then took over the planet Haven and decided to take prisoner the human population of that planet, turning them into her servants against their will. She would cross paths and play villain to the original Guardians of the Galaxy team initially, but they would end up defeating her, this time around at least. Her powers are similar to Wolverine's, being that she is his descendant. As a ruler, she also has other warriors at hand who are willing to fight for her, although she herself is also a capable and skilled fighter. Number 9, Albert. Albert was an android created to destroy the real Wolverine by Donald Pierce. He came from a kind of wacky time in comics and also worked with LCD, another android who resembled a little girl. Like I said, it was an interesting and strange time. In the end, both LCD and Albert would go rogue, deciding not to complete their mission as they developed their own free will and thought and decided they didn't want to die. In killing Wolverine, they likely would have been forced to self-destruct, which they just were not into. Albert the android has powers very similar to Wolverine, though he doesn't self-heal. But hey, he's an android, so he can be rebuilt or patched up in most cases if he's harmed. He also has the fighting prowess to almost match Wolverine of 616. Almost. And also possesses a genius level intellect. Supposedly. Number 8, Wolverine Earth 811. The Wolverine of Earth 811 is interesting, as it has been implied that his powers, while similar to the version of Wolverine from Earth 616, could have actually just been a result of human evolution, with him potentially being a descendant of a small group of ancestors known as the Moon Clan, who hid when the Celestials first arrived at Earth, avoiding any of their genetic experimentation. Despite these potential origins, Wolverine was still considered a mutant when the Sentinels took over, as he hails from the reality of Earth 811. And of course, Earth 811 is the reality of the Days of Future Past. He was the Wolverine to help Magneto rescue Scarlet Witch, but unfortunately she died during that attempt, and Magneto ended up paralyzed from the waist down. Wolverine would go on to join the Resistance and become a leader among them, so he not only brings with him his own abilities, but influence over the resistant forces located on his Earth in his reality. Number 7, Akahiro. Sure, Daken is a character all his own, but I also counted a clone that was used as a dirty bomb against vampires, so I feel like if I do that, it would be really insulting if we did not talk about Akahiro. Daken was an alternate version of Wolverine during Dark Reign, where Norman Osborn basically took over in the comics, where he forged the organization Hammer and his very own Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were made up of former and current villains repurposed and remarketed as Avengers replacements. Osborn actually tried to recruit some of the original Avengers after they'd been disbanded, but of course they pretty much all refused. They were like, we know you're Norman Osborn, so. Daken was recruited to be Dark Wolverine on the team, and while Akihiro might not be quite as villainous in the comics currently, at the time he was still pretty much one of the baddies. Daken is a terrifying alternate because he has less of a moral code than his dad, who already isn't known for his light touch when it comes to dealing with his opponents. Daken, like his father, is also a skilled fighter and assassin who was trained since he was a child to become a killer and a weapon for Romulus to use against Logan. Oh, and if you're not familiar with him, he also has pretty much all the powers of his dad. His claws are just a little bit different. Actually, Daken also has pheromone powers, so he's not really more powerful than his dad in terms of skill, but power set, just saying. Number 4. CANCERVERSE Wolverine. We don't know that much about CANCERVERSE Wolverine, who hails from the Earth of 10011, but we do know, like many others who hail from this reality, Wolverine here is horrifying to behold, and he is part of the X-Men, spelt E-X-Men. In the Cancerverse, death was completely eradicated, which you might think would bring about a sort of paradise in the cosmos, but instead this change had, well, the opposite effect, mutating everything into one big horror show. Turns out death wasn't quite as bad as we all thought, and that life, left unchecked, is actually horrifying. Who would have guessed? Number 3. Laura Kinney. Despite not even being an exact clone of Logan, X-23 is still one of the most powerful versions of Wolverine around out there. She became Wolverine in the all-new Wolverine series. Even today, it's more the mantle and look that Laura is known for, with both her and Logan currently using the same name, Wolverine, on Krakoa. So there are 2 Wolverines technically within the same continuity now. More recently, Wolverine was chosen to go on a mission inside the vault, along with Darwin and the resurrected Synch. The 3 were brought in to do so because of their extraordinary abilities and the fact that Synch could, in effect, use both of their powers himself. As we saw in issues 18 and 19 of the 2019 X-Men series, time moves differently in the vault. And in the end, the mission ended up taking, for them, hundreds of years before they actually managed to complete it and get out. But despite aging, Laura did not slow down. Even in the old woman Laura future, where her cells were beginning to break down due to her being created originally from genetic engineering, Laura still proved to be a badass, using her last bit of time alive to defeat Doom and free the people of Latveria. Basically all around, X-23 is just like the best. She's so cool. Number 1. Old Man Phoenix. Obviously one of the most powerful versions of Wolverine around has to be the one from the alternate future of King Thor, Earth 14412. Here Wolverine goes on to become the Phoenix after seemingly dying along with everyone else on Earth at the hands of Loki. The Phoenix however chose him, and because of that he lived again and was given an unimaginable amount of cosmic power. Logan mostly used this power to fend off villains including Ultron and Loki, and to keep the Space Stone out of Loki's hands. Many years later, as Old Man Phoenix, he would team up with King Thor to protect the Earth from Dr. Doom, after it was given new life again. Doom in this reality was also immensely powerful, and although Logan could not be killed in battle, he chose to sacrifice himself to give Thor the power to defeat Doom, imbuing his hammer Mjolnir with the Phoenix Force.